So I thought today I'd do something different, get the Wizard of Oz to come out from behind the curtain and let him speak. And actually, he's quite good. You know, it's funny, been fighting a cold, we went to Florida, got away, and Isabel got sick. And of course, it was just a matter of time before the cold got me. And Satan has his way of trying to disrupt and make things more difficult for you to do, but praise God, I'm breathing better today, with the exception of this uniform. I got this when I got out of the academy. So getting in it this morning was a miracle in itself, and I sound a little out of breath is because I can't breathe because this thing's so tight. So, you know, we're in church and we pray, and Jeremiah has already prayed, but typically Jeremiah and Jeffrey and myself, behind the scenes, we would always pray together before we would come out and speak. Today I just felt like I wanted to just say a prayer with all of you, and then Jeff is going to roll some video, and I'm going to talk, and he's going to roll some video, and we're going to do this little thing we do, and hopefully it's going to go well. So I'm going to start with the prayer. Father, Jesus, Holy Spirit, I pray that each and every person in this room, no matter what they're going through, and I'm sure everyone in here is bearing a cross of some sort at this time. I pray that you cover them all in your blessings. Give them the strength and the courage to endure whatever challenge is being brought their way. And like a great tree, I pray that the blessing that we're asking for them right now, like the roots in the ground, will spread to all their family members and friends. And that through them, you will bless many. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I'm going to go off the path a little bit from how we normally do this. And I'm going to do more just speaking from my head, because for the last couple of years, Jeremiah and Jeff have tried to encourage me to speak about testimony. Jeremiah feels it's a great way to make connection with people, the human side of us, where we're all fighting the same fights often, and that you're not alone. Of course, you're never alone because Jesus is with you. But here in this world, in the human community, sometimes we do feel alone. Of course, the theme is 4th of July is coming up. We're not that far removed from Memorial Day, and we're only 2 months away from 9/11. And I wasn't expecting my father-in-law and his beautiful wife Bonnie is with him now. And again, it just popped into my head, and I'm thinking, he's a veteran, combat veteran, Vietnam War. And him and I get to have conversations from time to time about things over the years that typically don't speak to other things about. Funny story, is related to other things that I want to talk about later, is in our old home in New York, Polly, my wife, and I, we lived in a very little house, almost 700 square feet. It was an old cottage, vacation cottage on a lake. And we were planning on having a baby, Isabella, by the way. I apologize now. I'll try not to embarrass you in passing. And we hired a builder. And it turned out the builder had a lot of problems. He had drug problems and alcohol problems. And there were times when I would come home from ground zero and have to drive around the town and pull him out of bars to talk to him. And we'd gotten in big trouble with the bank, and they were threatening to take the house, and I was still working at ground zero. Polly was overwhelmed. She was pregnant at that time. It had been going on for a really long time. The house should have been done like a year before the bank even started coming after us. So we called my father-in-law, he's a builder, and like, Dad, we're in big trouble. I don't know what to do. They're threatening to take the house. We had to fire the builder. So he came out for 2 weeks to visit us, and he was up before the sun, and we worked well into the night every night. And he works hard all the time anyway, but we worked him extra hard. Every morning, Pi would be up around 6 o'clock, and she'd start making breakfast for us to eat to get us ready to work all day. And one morning, and it was super hot, and it was a really bad day the day before, and he was sleeping in a room upstairs, which was the highest place in the house. We still had no air conditioning. It must have been 100 degrees up there, but he loves the heat. So I come out, and Holly's like, my father didn't come down. He's always down before the sun comes up. And she's like, we gotta go check on him. So I start going up the stairs real cautiously, and I look around the door, and he's laying in the bed, and the sheets are up over his head, and he's not moving, and I put my head down and I said, "Oh no, we killed him." And he jumped up. He just happened to be really exhausted. Excuse me. And he put in his typical day's work. But he ended up saving the day. We didn't lose the house. He's a tremendous man. He's a hard worker. And I'm sure he's not the only veteran in here. If there's any other vets, active or retired, or anybody else as a first responder that wears a uniform and serves the public, thank you, thank you, thank you. There is a scene from a movie, Act of Valor, and this scene I'm going to ask Jeff to play for you all. Often people ask me about the experiences of Great and the things that took place following that time, and it's hard to explain things to people. And I was watching this movie and got to this scene in the film, and it hurt. And I thought to myself, this is a good way to show people what it's like at one of these funerals when you're burying your lost brothers and sisters. So Jeff, you can roll that now, please.
Good man. Growing up without him is going to be hard. It's going to hurt. You'll feel alone, out to sea with no shore in sight. You'll wonder, why me? Why him? Remember, you have warrior's blood in your veins. The code that made your father who he was is the same code that'll make you a man he would admire, respect. Put your pain in a box, lock it down. Like those people in the paintings your father liked. We are men made up of boxes, chambers of loss and triumph, of hurt and hope and love. No one is stronger or more dangerous than a man who can harness his emotions. His past. Use it as fuel, as ammunition, as ink to write the most important letter of your life.
On behalf of the President of the United States and a grateful nation, I present you this flag in recognition of your husband's heroic achievements. You have my deepest condolences.
This is a story of one bright and sunny day. A day when a strange and awful thing would happen. A black cloud of evil would fall upon a great nation. The light of the sun would disappear and the voices of the city's people would turn from screams to cries to silence. This day, September 11th, 2001, a day when Satan sent his henchmen to do his evil, a day when God would send his soldiers to deliver his children and protect the nation he loves. I am a soldier of God, spared on that day so that I could come before all of you, so I might be a reminder to all the people of his great power and his love. It is the morning of September 11th, a morning of unmatched clarity and beauty. In New York City, the sky is seldom so clear and the sun so radiant. I had just finished a busy 24-hour tour in my Bronx Engine Company 62. After a workout on heavy bag, I hit the showers before heading home. Little did I know that it would be many days before I would see my wife and home again. In that moment, everything was about to change forever. Over the alarm box came a call for a fifth alarm in the borough of Manhattan. Not a second, or a third, or a fourth, but right to a fifth. When I heard the fifth called out, it struck me to be very strange. So I jumped out of the shower to see what was happening. The locker room, which normally would be full of guys at change of tours, was empty. At this point, I was struck by worry. Where had everyone gone? So I ran around the lockers towards the captain's office. It was then that the question of where everyone had gone was answered. All the guys were gathered in the captain's office to view the news broadcast of the first plane strike. We all gazed at the TV screen trying to figure out what our role and what our cause might be. As we spoke, another jet appeared on the screen, and then a second fireball. We didn't know it then, but our lives and our nation were about to change forever. At that moment, all the tones went off. Phones were ringing, guys were scrambling for gear. I looked at a few guys that had just gotten off duty with me, and I told them to grab their gear, and we would pile into my pickup truck and get down there now. Just as we started to head out of the captain's office, he called us back. We were to grab a spare rig from Clark City and respond as a special unit. This would take some time. Not the way I wanted to do this, but orders are orders. I was the only off-duty MPO, so I took the captain to get the spare rig. It's funny the things that stand out in our minds, moments that seem to be welded in our memories forever. I remember the look on the captain's face when the second jet hit. He turned to us all and said, "We're going to lose a lot of guys today, boys." En route to pick up the spare rig, we were listening to the news over the car radio when the announcement was broadcast that the Pentagon had been hit and more planes were unaccounted for. They believed the White House would be the next target of Satan's entry. I looked over at my captain. "My God, this is it," I said to him. The expression on his face was blank. At that moment, my mind raced to the faces of my wife, Polly, and my mom and dad, my brother and my sister. Never had I felt such fear for them all. I remember making repeated phone calls to my wife, but was unable to reach her. I knew where I was headed, and things for me and my brothers were grim at best. After a few tries, I was able to reach my dad on the hard line. Cell phones were down due to the destruction of the towers. I told my dad that I was headed for the Trade Center, and I didn't know if I would see him for some time. I remember telling him that if I were to fall, to please take care of Polly for me. He assured me he would, and he told me he loved me. It's strange that things change as you grow older. At some point, most of us slow down enough to stop and take a long look back down the road that has been our lives. So much has changed from when I first wrote this speech, when I first brought my family to the mountains of PA. I thought I found a safe place to raise my daughter and protect my family. I thought I had escaped my nightmares, and only good days would lie ahead, but I was wrong. I have chosen Christ and have angered our evil enemy. I have accepted my commission as a soldier of God. So the war continues. There is no place to take shelter except in the Word of God. I remember when this seed was placed in my heart. A small boy who dreamed of being Batman or Superman. Running down the hallways of our Bronx apartment building in mid-August, wearing my Batman mask and cape from Halloween. I see a young teen boy running home to watch Samson and Delilah on the 4 o'clock movie. If only I could be Samson, I could save all the people who are too weak to protect themselves. I see a young man so close to the destruction of self and others over my own loss, failures, and rejection. I see a broken heart for my loved one who I could not save. My daughter, who shattered hope, I failed to heal. And just as I feel I can't fight any longer, God steps in the time of despair, lifting up my soul, my life, and giving me another opportunity, one after another, to do good for his people. What a journey it has been. Like all great warriors for God, I have been blessed, been broken and battle-scarred. But always God has picked me back up, cleaned my wounds, kissed my broken heart to show me how much more he had for me to become. Always another chance to climb another step closer to home. If only I could do it with grace. Maybe a firefighter at a time when he knew his soldiers would be needed most. At a time when he knew the powers of evil would rise up. God would meet the armies of evil as he has done since the beginning of time. God's people, the people of America. America, a beacon of freedom, life, and liberty. His people would rise together to share his light through the billowing black smoke of hell and darkness. A nation of souls filled with God's unbound love. My life has been spared that day, and so many times before, so that I could stand witness to his triumph over Satan's evil attempt to conquer me. I have seen great and horrible carnage. I have stood in the stench of death and decay, dug up and carried out the body parts of my brothers and sisters. I have stood before the fires of hell on earth. I stood honored by the caskets of friends. As I watched mothers, fathers, wives weep for our precious brave lost sons. I have stood in the sea of blue, 6,000 strong, as the bagpipes cried out to the heavens, and listened to the thundering rumble of drums. I stood at attention, tears streaming down my face. As widows dressed in black walk slowly, clenching in tiny hands, a little girl whose father was and will not be anymore. I see a young boy holding his father's charred helmet, so careful as he carries it in on his father's last run behind a shiny red fire truck. I stood witness and was spared. And God has led me here before all of you to tell you to take up the fight against evil, for it lives among us, and he alone can show you how to rise above it. God will use the people of America, as he did with our founding fathers, to be a light that leads to his kingdom. Many great men, Washington, Lincoln, Reagan, were given a vision from the Almighty. It is what makes America the great nation we hold so dear. We must never forget that a godless nation cannot stand. We must stand up and raise our voices above those who would work to take God out of America. Those who want his protection to be forever removed from our country, so evil and Satan can run down upon us, as he did on September 11th. The great American leader once said in his speech, A Time for Choosing, "There is a crusade for freedom and a higher calling and a mission in our lives." He said, let us seek to do God's will in all things, to stand for freedom, to speak for humanity. That great man was Ronald Reagan, a leader who often referred to his scriptures. He told us that he believed that American people had a rendezvous with destiny. The great Reverend Billy Graham said he had a prayer for America. It was for all the churches across our nation to once again be filled with God's children as they were on the Sundays that followed the attacks. What are we doing to answer that prayer? In the absence of the Reverend, it is time for us to become leaders. Time for us to seek God's wisdom. We each have a rendezvous with our own destiny. What will you choose? Today we honor all those who put on a uniform and go out to protect others at any cost. But we must always remember that each and every one of you can be a hero every day. Each of us in our own way. Hero or villain, your words and actions have great power. Think about the stories you hear on the news every day. A young person is walking in despair and pain, and you are the last person to speak words to them. You can be words of love and hope. It just might give them the strength to fight on. Or maybe you use your power to speak words of hate or pain, and you send them over the edge of darkness. Maybe you choose to be the villain, and they take their own life, or they go on a shooting spree and kill many. Will you be the saving hero and bring comfort, or the villain and toss a final stone? Normally, in my life, I think most of my friends and family members would say I was A-type personality, anal. Everything has to be structured and prepared and written out, and dot the I's and cross the T's, and I kind of do everything that way. And for some reason, and I wrestled with this presentation more than any that we've done in the past. I was probably up all night last night, and I talked to Jeremiah last week about it, so I just don't know how I'm going to go about doing this. We usually have pretty spot on. I just have a mission and I go out to do it. And I think maybe part of the reason why I'm struggling a little bit more now is I think maybe in the past there was a little bit more arrogance, more assuredness that I had, and that I always knew what I was doing and that I would just get it done. And I think, I coach hockey teams, and one of the things I always say to my players is you need to be humble or the world will humble you. And I think that maybe, again, I'm at another stage in my life where I've been humbled even more, and I don't have that same arrogant nature or so sure of myself. I think that life has continued to show me that just when I think I know what I'm doing, or that I have a plan, and a track that I'm going to follow, things will be thrown at me that will derail whatever it is I think that I'm going to do. I think that in my conversation with you here today, part of what I'm trying to achieve is to share some of my battles and failures, but through it all, not losing hope, not losing faith, continue to reach out to God, which again is a humbling thing to do for a person that grew up thinking that he could save the world and he was stronger than anything that would come against him. Oh, it's a very hard lesson to learn that maybe I wasn't strong enough on my own. I'm sure many of you have had challenges in your lives where you found that you couldn't conquer them on your own, that you needed something more to overcome whatever it is. Sometimes they're huge things. Sometimes they're very small. The last couple of years, for people that, and there are several here, that have been part of the journey with us, family members and friends, the community that rallied around my wife during her battle with cancer. We got to see a lot of good things in people. There's a lot of love in that time. I actually just received a phone call the other day from one of the mothers of one of our hockey teams, and I spoke with one of the players that I coached many years ago. And he just found out that his mother has a brain tumor. And he is now coming to terms with the fact that his mother has very little time. He has a little sister that he's trying to help through it. And his stepfather is struggling badly. I hope that I will be able to encourage him more and to walk with him through this time. I have been blessed and honored as a coach with this individual player who have got to win national championships and state titles through the good times. And I always preach to the guys then, and I still preach to the guys today, that tomorrow is promised to no one. I try to instill in the players God, firstly, family, teamwork, and finding their higher purpose. I'll remind them often that my main purpose for being there is not about the game. I often have these conversations with my daughter's boyfriend, Colin, now, who's a swimmer. And I try to instill the same things in him. It's just a game right now. The bigger things, and things that you learn from the game, that teach you to be the man that this country needs, the man that your family needs. Maybe one day, the man that my daughter will need. We have the power to do few things, but one of the things that we can do is make choices. The most important thing that you can choose always is Christ. Always. And I guess that's probably the greatest choice and the greatest power we have, is turn to Him or turn away from Him. Many people, like the people on September 11th, lost their loved ones in the blink of an eye. The blessing and the fortune that my wife and I had was she battled a brutal disease for almost 4 years. But the blessing was that we had time to do and say and speak and express the love that we had for one another through that time. She had much time to make things right with Jesus, and she was grateful and thankful for that. And also in the process of her struggle and her journey, through her great strength, she inspired many people who did not know who Christ was, or were struggling and stumbling on their own path. And amazingly, through who she was, all her suffering and pain, she still managed to make things about them and their struggles. It was inspiring to watch, and it was beautiful. And I'm thankful for it. You know, I was talking to Jeff before, do I deconstruct this thing and go back from being a fireman in 9/11 and going younger till being a child and actually being back in my mother's womb, or do I go from the trials of being a young boy and coming through life and then ending it here today with all of you? I guess probably be best to start in the beginning. Like probably many of you, maybe not all. My brother was a monster and he still kind of is. I was a very quiet, polite gentleman. Oddly, I would prefer to spend time with adults than with other kids, because I kind of felt like I could have conversations with grown-ups that I couldn't have with kids my own age. But I guess the kids that were my own age didn't appreciate that too much. I think they thought I was what I thought I was, and playground became a ritual of, instead of playing kickball, it was kick Garrett down the hill and watch him come back up and kick him back down the hill. See how many times we do. Needless to say, spent the first couple of years of school being bullied. And finally, my mother, who was a tough old Irish Catholic woman, who used to fight in parking lots with grown men, She was a scrapper. She finally said, "I'm tired of fixing your torn clothes, and either you're going to stand up to those boys or you're going to have to fight me." And there was nothing more terrifying in my life than my mother. So I decided finally that it was a better idea to fight 5 guys by myself than to go home and have to fight my mom. But there was a huge shift in my personality once I realized that they were cowards and they only had strength in their numbers. Over time, it became very difficult not to become the bully myself and to go out with exact vengeance and judgment on those who I felt had it coming. And that moment and that turnaround carried on through a large portion of my life to adulthood, where often Holly would tell me that you will be judged as you judge, and that you need to stop, because I felt that it was my job. If I didn't agree with what you did, I would be the judge, jury, and I would execute you. It got me into trouble, often that attitude. And I remember, I was talking to my daughter about this, because often we have conversations, and she'll ask about things with faith, and I go off on old stories. And I was telling her about how my crazy little brother had this thing where he would find the biggest, baddest guy in the neighborhood and provoke him. And he did it because he thought it was fun. And he would get a little bit of a beating for a while, and eventually I would have to do something about it, which I was this quiet guy and did not like any kind of confrontation. And I think he was amused by it. And there was one incident where I was hiding in the house because I knew what was coming, and my mother finally grabbed me and she saw what was going on in the street, and she said, "You gotta go out there and help your brother and protect him." I knew if I stayed in the house I was going to have to face her, so it was easier once again to go out and deal with the bully that was beating my brother in the street. Now I remember going out and confronting him, and I tried to be reasonable and have a conversation with this guy, and he was bigger and older and he wasn't going to have it, so he decided he was going to beat up on me next, and things didn't work out that way. And I remember giving him a vicious beating, and while I was giving him this vicious beating, having a conversation with myself saying, "Who is this? Where is this coming from? I can't do this." And realizing that the power that I had in that moment was not mine. But again, it was a turning point. It was part of that turning point of slowly going to the edge of becoming a bully myself. And then a few years later, things developed. I remember my friends wanted to amuse themselves. They were bored one day and they decided that it would be a good idea to provoke Garrett into beating somebody up. And it happened to be that boy a few years later, who was bothering no one, was not bothering me. He had changed drastically from that first fight that we had. It had a positive effect on him, believe it or not. And he was no longer a bully, he became a better kid. But to amuse my friends, I decided that he would be the entertainment for the afternoon. And I went after him, unprovoked, for no reason. And I hit him with a shot and I knocked him down. And in my heart, I knew what I was doing was wrong. And I reached out my hands and I helped him back up off the ground, which makes no sense at all. Except that in my heart, I knew I was abusing something that I was given. Needless to say, I ended up with a black eye. And it's probably the first time that ever happened. And in that moment when that happened, I could hear God's voice saying, "This is what you brought on yourself, because you've abused what I've given you." And that would be the last time I ever bullied anyone, and actually spent the rest of my young life protecting other people that were bullied me. And often when I did get in fights, it would be for other people. To this day, I'm not very quick to defend myself, but I am very rapid to jump in to help other people. And I think part of it is I probably still carry a little bit of shame from that day for what I did, and guilt, which is not a bad thing because it keeps me from becoming a monster myself. You know, you come up here and you have the opportunity, and it's a blessing to speak to people, and you want to say things that are going to help people and inspire and motivate them. And you try, there's young people here, there's older people here, there's people from all walks of life and age. And you try to bring things into it that help everyone. So going through being young, aside from what I was just saying, I remember being 11 years old and how awkward it was that I was introduced to my first razor at 11 to shave, which was extremely young and awkward. And I remember being afraid to go to gym and how uncomfortable it was. So maybe there's some young guy here right now that's going through this and just here to tell you it's okay. Because I had hair on my legs and hair under my arms and nobody else did, and I wouldn't change. So I would go to the next class all sweaty because I was so embarrassed. I remember at 11 years old not knowing what was going on with my body and what nature was doing to me. And for all of you old enough to experience those awkward things, I remember praying to God, what's going on? Please help me get through this time. I didn't know what to do. It was a difficult age. There was a lot of embarrassment during that time, but He got me through it. I don't know where I'm going with that. I guess I'm just, through life, and often Jeff would say to me, you need to talk to people about the things that you saw at 9/11 and as a fireman. And it's weird the things that you remember and things that you don't remember. You don't remember the people that we were fortunate enough that God used us to save. Unfortunately, most of my memories are the memories of the people that we were unable to save. And those memories are very vivid and clear. I don't know why things work that way. You know, I would ask Jeff, well, how do I tell people these stories without making them upset, making them sick? So I'll share some that aren't too brutal, but things have changed how I was. I remember when we first would roll up and we would save people, I was kind of like a real rah-rah guy. I was like, yeah, we saved that person. Awesome. And then over time, we weren't saving as many as we were losing. And it became distressing. And again, in my conversations with God, I had to find out how to deal with the pain. So I remember going to a dinner with my wife one day, and it was after 9/11, and actually we had a big fire just recently before that dinner, and we had two little boys that we pulled out of the building. And we worked on them, got them to the ER in the hospital. They were two little brothers, 5 and maybe 8, and we lost them. And I remember the family coming in, and I remember the screams of the mother and the grandmother because they were just told the poor to God. It's just, you don't forget things like that. And that pain. I remember telling myself, I don't ever want to feel that kind of suffering and loss. And the pastor, Baker, Sr., when we first came to church, he would often talk about Abraham and he's having to sacrifice Isaac at the altar. And those sermons would actually kind of bring tears to my eyes. And then there were times when he would speak about Job. I hated the book of Job. I would sit there and without putting my fingers in my ears, I would try not to hear what he was saying because I would sit there and think, I don't know how I would handle all that loss and pain, and I didn't want to know anything about it. And unfortunately, life has a funny way, once again, of you can't hide from it. And over time, now I see how things worked. You know, we used to breed large guard dogs, and at a very young age, we started to lose them to different things. One died of kidney disease, another one had a heart attack, another one had, two of them had cancer, and we eventually had to put them all down, and it was leading up to Polly getting sick. And at first, I couldn't understand why all of it was happening. It was heartbreaking because if you're an animal person, and I am, and I spent most of my days with my daughter and my dogs. I spent probably more time with my dogs and my daughter than I did with Polly at that time. And it was painful to lose those dogs. And it was painful to watch because poor Isabella, actually, one of them was sick, and I had to send her bring him some scraps after dinner, and she came running back to me, and she's like, "Sanjay's not moving, Daddy." So I went in there, and sure enough, the poor guy, he had passed away while we went out for dinner. And it was Isabella that found him and had to help me carry this poor dog out of his kennel. And then another time with our dog Simba, not long after that, I gave Isabella food to bring to Simba as a treat. She comes running back to me, he's not moving. He was gone too. So, I felt bad for her, but she had to keep finding these poor animals the way that they were. But she was a trooper. But I didn't understand what was happening, and then not long after we lost the last of the big dogs, we were away in Florida at my parents for Christmas, and Polly was not feeling good. She wasn't feeling well. But she was hard-headed, to the Decker trait. She was in pain, but she wouldn't admit that she was in pain. She was noticing differences in her body, but she just wrote them off as she was getting older and she was just gaining some weight. But then she started having problems eating at my parents' house, so I asked her to see her abdomen where she had said she had some pain. And sure enough, I palpated her abdomen and told her that it was not fat, but there was something there. So we immediately took her to the hospital and we began tests there in Florida. Not long after, we had to go tell Isabella that we were not going to Disney World because Mommy had some problems and we had to take her home. And then we had to go chase her down because she took off and ran onto a tree because she was hiding from us because she wanted to go see Mickey. So, again, for her, more difficult times, for us more difficult times, but after a while I realized that the reason why the dogs had to go was because God knew that my wife was going to need my undivided attention and my care pretty much around the clock towards the end. You don't always know why things happen in your life. And even when they seem really bad, maybe there's a reason for it. And again, I could have became angry, turned away from God, which would have been the worst thing I possibly could have done. But instead, I went to Him and listened, and He explained to me why things were happening the way that they were. Not always. There is often my daughter will stop me and ask me why things happen the way they did, or why things continue to happen. And I don't always have answers for her. And sometimes I really, when it comes to things in matters of God, I wish I could come up with better things to tell her. Because after time, and I'm sure all of you know, sometimes you fall away because the pain is too great or too difficult. Or you don't find the answers you're looking for, so you think that there are none. If you hang on long enough and you keep battling forward and just continue to take things to Christ, you'll find your way. He'll give you strength, and He'll get you through it. You know, I opened by mentioning my father-in-law. Again, many, many years ago, I had a family member who was a Korean War veteran, combat veteran. And I remember sometimes when he would watch war movies, he would kind of just zone out. And I remember one day walking into the living room, it was around Thanksgiving, the family had gathered, and I went in there to tell him that dinner was ready. And he was sitting on the couch, and he was watching an old war movie, and he was like in a coma, and he was just crying. And at that time, I was still very young. I watched him, and I felt pain for him, but I didn't understand at that time what was happening to him. And obviously now I understand that the trauma and the loss that he witnessed as a combat soldier, and watching that film brought him back to the place of his suffering. It's something that he continued to deal with right to the end of his life. My first wife, who I was married to for a short period of time, I wanted to be a professional hockey player. My whole life was driven towards that dream. And I went to the IHL draft, and after I was there and the draft ended and I didn't get signed by any teams, I had to come home and try and figure out now what do I do. I did exactly what my parents told me not to do. I put all my eggs in one basket. Now the basket is smashed, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I had an opportunity to go play in Europe, in Germany. So I told my girlfriend at that time, I didn't get signed to play in the big league, but I have an opportunity to go play in Germany. And her response to me was, if you go to Germany and play hockey, I won't be here when you get back. So it was, again, decision time. Now I have to realize it's a time to just let the dream go. You're getting too old. I don't want to lose her because I was madly in love with her and I wanted to marry her. And I knew that if I went to Germany, she wasn't kidding around. She wouldn't be here when I got back. So I decided to hang up my skates. We got married, only for 4 years. Put her through nursing school. Again, she ended up becoming an abortion nurse, which at the time I didn't know. But God has a funny way of making things play out. Not long after we were separated and I was living with my brother and my family, I find out that that's the first job she took was being a nurse at an abortion clinic. That was a sign right there that she's definitely not the lady for me. There were other signs, but my friends and family told me, and I didn't listen because I thought I knew better. I didn't. So guys, girls, if your parents and your friends are telling you if you're dating somebody, it's probably not the one for you, listen to them a little bit at least. Otherwise, you might end up going down the same road I went down. I guess the lesson in that was, again, God knows what he's doing. Now, I didn't know it at the time. I was heartbroken. I actually, at times, I would drive my car and drive straight at tractor trailers playing a game of chicken because at that point, I felt like I was a complete failure. I didn't make it to the big leagues. I gave up that dream. I married this girl. Now I can't even make a husband work. I had nothing. I was young. I was dumb. I was desperate. I just thought I didn't want to live anymore. Not long after that, the fire department, which I had been waiting 6 years for to get a call to go to the academy, finally called. And again, God gave me, right when I was at my breaking point, when I was ready to give up, He gave me a new life, a better life than I ever imagined. Not long after the fire academy, He brought Polly back into my life. We were friends for a long time. And I thought I would never meet another girl to marry. And then I met Polly. And I have a better marriage and wife than I ever dreamed I could have again. But not long before all that happened, I remember my family went to the beach and they made me go with them to try and get my head back together, standing on the beach, yelling up at the sky, cursing at God to strike me down with lightning, just kill me and get it over with. I've had it. And I'm had it with you too. And then not long after that, He turned another page. And He gave me a new life. He gave me a new wife. I remember going to the fire academy, and I was honest with myself. I struggled in school, was not a great student, barely got out. They were happy to get me out of high school. And I remember talking to God about what I hoped to do to start this thing right. And I knew I wasn't going to be the valedictorian of the class because just not there. But I made a deal with God. It's funny to make deals with God, but I prayed to God that if I couldn't be valedictorian, which I knew honestly I couldn't be, let me be top of the class in strength and conditioning. That was a big part of Fire Academy. And once again, not only did He answer my prayer to be top of the class, but He allowed me to break all the records in the fire department, New York City Fire Department's history. So again, it was a great message for me. And it inspired me that He was still with me, that He hadn't, despite all the mistakes that I made in my life, He didn't leave me. He was still with me. And then, becoming a fireman and these things happening in 9/11, we broke ground to start construction on our house the day the towers were hit. And it was a nightmare from then on, between not being home, and I remember the first time in days going home and driving through our little town, and there were American flags up and down the streets leading to our little shack in the woods. And that was the first time I allowed myself to feel the emotions and the pain and the destruction that we had been working in and around. The numbers of guys who lost and friends that I knew were missing, I broke down. And then finally pulled up to the house where Polly was waiting for me, and we cried together for quite some time. I was only home for 8 hours, and then I had to go right back to ground zero. And in that year that followed, we had been trying to have a baby for a while, and we were unsuccessful. And finally, Polly was able to get pregnant with Isabella, and despite things in the house were still going bad, I ended up with a broken ankle, working at ground zero, 15, 18-hour tours, limping around down there, and they finally had been through my exhaustion and pain. I ended up attacking a bulldozer with a shovel, which wasn't a very intelligent thing to do. The guy almost ran over one of my buddies, and they pulled me out of ground zero and sent me to seek counseling and to get my broken ankle fixed. So I was home for a little bit with Polly, which again, God knows what he's doing, because the disaster at the house needed me to be there more. It took that to get me there, and it did. We were 7 months into Polly's pregnancy with Isabella, and we were going for one of our final ultrasounds. And one nurse came in, and then another doctor came in, and then another nurse came in, and then another doctor came in. Before you knew it, there was like 8 people in there. They were all huddled up talking. We started to look at each other and wondering what's wrong. The doctor took us out, and he said, "Your daughter has a hole in her heart, 2 holes in her brain, a cleft palate, and she probably has Down syndrome. We think you should abort the baby." Again, all that was transpiring and was happening at that time. I remember being in this kitchen of this house that was torn to pieces. It was a mess. Living in that, on my knees, my head in my wife's lap, asking God, why do these things keep happening to us? So they ended up sending us to a specialist in New York. And the doctor was a great man. He was a godly man. And he asked us what we thought God wanted us to do and what we felt in our hearts. And we said that we were going to believe God for a healthy baby. We will not terminate our child. And we had Isabella, and she was born healthy and strong, and they were wrong. Put our faith in God, and he delivered. Not long after that, we came back to have Christmas with our family here in Pennsylvania, and Isabella was sick for a while, and Polly was exhausted from being up with her night after night after night, and she was in her mother's house. We were staying there one night, and the baby was with her in the bedroom. She came out, she's like, "I'm exhausted, please just sit with Isabella, rock a chair for a while. I gotta get some sleep." So I took the baby and I was rocking her, and I heard this small voice to say, "Get up and take her to the emergency room." So I got up, went into Polly, said, "Get dressed now, we gotta take her to the ER." Sure enough, we took her to the ER, where she spent 10 days in ICU. She had pneumonia, she had RSV virus, and she was in critical condition. Days after we were there, and the prognosis was getting better, that she was going to make it, I remember sitting in a rocking chair with her, and finally, again, the emotions set in. And I sat there with my little baby and cried, thank God, that she was going to make it. Through the years, there have been many difficult battles for us and challenges. My message to you, and there are challenges today. I remember Polly, towards the end of her life, taking her to the hospital to have another operation, and Browser took her apart. And just a few weeks before that, they had told me that I had prostate cancer. And it ended up, again, I'm talking to God saying, how much more? We can't take too much more, God. So on March 23rd, my 52nd birthday, 53rd birthday, I was in one hospital, and Polly was a block down the street from me, and they were cutting us both open at the same time. Cancer out of her, kind of cancer out of me. And I remember having to talk to my daughter about that, and I remember her writing a card to her mother on her final Mother's Day, and reading it, and this brave child telling her mother that it was okay to stop fighting. That we would be okay. she needed to just do what was best for her at that point and stop suffering. There are still challenges all the time now. Every time I have to go get a PSA test, it is a hair-raising experience, and I'm always in prayer that there'll be no more bad news for now. Pray for my daughter. Pray for this country. Pray for other people in our family who are also going through their own illnesses and difficulties. We prayed earlier for all of you, because I am sure there are people in this room, and maybe tonight we'll be talking to God and asking for strength and courage and healing and guidance to get through whatever it is that you're going through. I pray that in all your trials and tribulations, that the one thing that you do is always give it to Christ. To never turn away from Him. To never give up on Him, because He will not give up on you. I'm going to finish by just reading a couple of things I wrote down, just meandering in my mind one night. And I'm going to hand it back over to Pastor Jeremiah. Well, those who have no love for Jesus, who spilt His blood for our sin, God's wrath towards the unbelievers is unavoidable. For God is at war with the despisers of the perfect word on the cross of Jesus. Jesus is the peace that stands permanently between the faithful and God's burning fury. Jesus is our salvation. His very blood is the cure to certain death, to certain damnation, to hell for eternity. The law could not save the Jews, and man cannot be saved by his own works. Only by embracing the words of Jesus and His works can you know God's grace. Sinful man has no access to God but through Jesus. He is the door, the only path to God. You have but one thing to do: stand with Jesus and have God's undeserved forgiveness, or stand on your own in your unavoidable sin and dive into the lake of fire. Jesus is available, Jesus is able to wash away all your sin. He can cover you in His grace. His life and death, resurrection, is greater than all of your sin. Man cannot maintain his own salvation. If it was in our hands, we would always lose our salvation. But if you are in Christ Jesus, your salvation cannot be undone. For if your sin is greater than the grace given to you by Jesus, then you must be greater than the love and peace and grace of the Lord. And we all know that that is impossible. Jesus came because He knew that we were incapable of living a sinless life. God's Son came and took it all away. He said, "Come to me, and I will go before the Father on your behalf. He will take away all your sin and replace it with His never-ending grace. You don't have to be perfect of yourself, because you can't, in your own power, be sinless perfection. But if you are of Jesus' flock, you are under the protection of the Almighty Shepherd. He gave His life to protect His sheep. Where sin abounds, grace much more abounds. The grace of God has no limits, and those who hear His voice are eternally covered. We have hope because even with all our flaws, we belong to Him." Just a month ago, I reached out to Jeremiah because, again, I am in uncharted waters of the place in my life. And I have struggles and battles with my own humanity and my own sin nature to this day. And I was losing a little bit of hope. I was tired and weary. And He sent something to me because my fear was losing my salvation. Because I know that still in my heart, in my spirit, in my mind, There are parts of me that is a great sinner. I pray all the time to break away from those things. But I've been praying that prayer since I was a little boy, and I still have not accomplished it. But the message that Jeremiah sent to me reassured me that just what I spoke to you, that his grace for those who love him can never be worn out. Your sin can never be greater than his love, as long as you give your heart to him. Thank you, Jeremiah.